Hello and welcome to Tribe Speaking. In this edition of Tribe Speaking, we are discussing on racism, especially focusing on the Nordic students residing in metropolitan cities, either for higher studies or for searching for employment. In the previous part of this edition, we have discussed on what is racism, how it occurs, and mindset of racist people. In this part, we will discuss on the mental and the psychological trauma that the target group undergoes after experiencing a racial attack or racial discrimination. To discuss on this topic, we have Professor Bibinaz Thokchom. She came to Delhi 20 years ago for higher studies, and now she teaches social psychology at School of Human Studies, Ambedkar University. We also have Professor Ramananda Mayanglambam, who also came to Delhi for higher studies 25 years ago, who teaches physical chemistry at Kinorimal College, University of Delhi. He has been involved with various activities for the welfare of SC/ST students and students from Nordic community. I welcome both the professors again. So let me start with Professor Bibinaz. Professor, we have discussed on what is racism and the mindset of racist people in the previous parts. Now, can you please tell me, either from your own experience or from someone that you know, what do the students say or feel or react after facing racial attack?
Thank you for the question, and it's a very important issue that needs to be addressed at some length because people usually don't think about what the person undergoes after having heard about these news. People usually say that they go through some incident, some kind of social crisis, racial crisis, but then after that, what really happens with the person is something which is left with a lot of questions. So I'd like to clarify here a little bit. And I want to divide the response and the impact at the two levels. One is more of an immediate impact, and the other is more of a long-lasting psychological impact that the target person or groups undergo. As an immediate impact is more of a shock which the person experiences when suddenly someone out of the blue calls out a racial slur or a kind of physical attack or for no particular reason or just for responding back to the kind of attacks that they are encountering. So when a person is in a state of shock, it's very difficult and it does have a numbing impact on the person where the person has no idea or is completely numb to even respond, to not even knowing how to respond to it. So normally when we take these cases to the police would ask, why didn't you shout or why didn't you ask for help at that moment? But it is very difficult for the person in shock to actually ask for help because the person is confused what to do because it comes all of a sudden, out of blue, out of nowhere. Okay, so that is one thing, and often. There's also a situation which leads to escalation of the violence, escalation of the attack into something more severe violence is of the intolerance of the racist. When a racist attacks a person, he's already calculated in the mind, thinking with this expectation that the person is something I can play with the at the expense of this person. Okay. So when a person unexpectedly responds back to them, then they get this sense of loss of control of the situation. So they would do anything that is possible in their capacity to get back the situation in their control. Okay, so that is when usually the initial racial slur escalates into more violent, severe attacks. Okay, that is more of an immediate impact, and it does leave a grave, deep psychological trauma or kind of disturbances to the person who's actually at the receiving end. Okay, so these when a person has already undergone a shock, or like we have talked before in systemic racism, where racism becomes an everyday part of your life, it becomes like the system forces the social system that we live in kind of forces us to live with or normalize this experience of racism. Then it just gives a sense of loss to the person who's been targeted directly first, and also the entire rest who have been listening or observing or have indirect experiences of such exposure. So the repeated exposure of everyday racism leads to frustration, anger with self and also others, thereby losing their sense of conscience. So person may even develop inability to deal with anything that triggers the shocking and threatening experiences. Okay, so it disturbs the mental health of the person who fall prey to racism, and also generally speaking, it kind of becomes an extra mental burden to bear in mind that someone from the local is going to question and doubt you, doubt about who you are, and or say something or the other that makes you feel that you have done something wrong. So there is like a sense of I am doing something wrong is constantly in the mind, and the person feels constantly under some kind of surveillance. So life begins to feel as if you are constantly under surveillance, and the target person may even get into severe depression. There are chances. Okay, for some people who have already been going through a lot of difficulties in their personal life, and that can happen with anybody, right? So the target person, depending on their life phase and situation, may even get into severe depression and develop suicidal tendencies in grave circumstances where they actually lack the kind of social support, peer support, or family support, or any kind of support system. So racism also leads to having the person develop an increasing sense of alienation. And when we mention alienation, we're talking about it is very evident in the way how people from the Northeast are interacting and always mingling with people from the same community, and have a lot of reluctance in mingling with the rest of Indians. So and it becomes quite prevalent, and that is all coming from these everyday experience of everyday racism. So they started staying aloof from others, and this could be one of the major reasons why the students, even in the class, they often being frequently going absent or not expressing themselves. Besides other factors that we have mentioned briefly in earlier discussions, such as language barriers, burdens to adjust with new culture, new concepts, terms, and conditions of living in the metro cities, which are new learnings for them. Okay, so this is usually a situation where the aggression, like the differences in cultures that we also have mentioned before or talked about, is just want to give an example of these cultural differences, and and we try to imagine the kind of cultural shock that people would have is suppose for example the aggression and arrogance in our sense, in the sense of how a person who is brought up and who grew up in Northeast is a kind of confidence for the person who lives in other parts of the country, and that happens quite often, more frequently, I would say, in the metro cities where there is heightened competition and heightened sense of competition. There is a number of increasing number of migrants, etc. Okay, so the aggression and arrogance in our sense become confidence for them. Uh, uh, and the politeness and humble with which we grew up in our understanding is a sign of weakness and apologetic to the rest of the to the people in the metro cities. Okay, so these again, all related psychological impact is also to feel discouraged to study. Classroom becomes a reminder of the shock that they experience every day. Um, and things that locals would say, the stares that they would often indulge in, or news about racism becomes a triggering point from the stresses associated with those disturbing social encounters. Okay, and it constantly, a target person is constantly feeling that you are doing something wrong because of the constant moral policing, which is happening, which is coming from the locals, because of the constant demands to be someone else than one actually is. Okay, because we brought up in the schema that I talked about before. The schema is set at the formative stages of our development, and we try to process the new information, new social information along with that schema. And when something new comes up, people take time to accommodate those new information within our mind. And while doing that, there's additional experience of shock. So it kind of gives a sense that you have to be somebody else, or you have to be something else than you are, and it becomes a question of identity for the person. Okay, so gradually and eventually leads to the sense of losing one's own identity, and it already has been researched and theorized that a continuous taunting and abuse or violence, violence can be emotional, physical, or mental violence, can lead someone to even anticipate similar to anticipation of a similar encounters later in their life. So there's always a fear that this is going to continue, and it can be like it's an everyday, it becomes an everyday burden. Some people may cope up with this quite easily, but we cannot neglect the fact that many people are also having their own set of life daily life problems, which they have been carrying from the background they are in, from the economy of the family, and also about the social
Okay,
status.
Professor, who do you think is the among the Nordic community, or among the target group, who do you think is the most vulnerable? Is there any, like,
Uh,
depending upon the gender, or depending upon age, or depending upon the economic condition, or depending upon the type of language that they speak, who do you think is among the most vulnerable? Or is it like
okay,
similar? It depends.
yeah, there's not a straight answer to this. The most vulnerable, if we are to identify, it would be a combination of the personality the person has developed for themselves. There are personalities who cope up with difficulties easily, and there are also personalities who go inwards more into reflection mode, and those are the ones who would take time to come out of this kind of depression. So someone who takes things easy, or there are also someone who takes things much more deeply and much more seriously. Okay, and in combination, in addition to this, the kind of life circumstances that they lived through, even before coming to the metro cities, and the kind of shocking experiences, the cultural shocks that they are experiencing in after coming to the metro cities. All these things come together. This is not just one factor. There are multiple factors which is leading up to identifying someone who's more vulnerable to this. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, thanks a lot, Professor. And now, actually, I want to come to Professor Rahman. Yeah. As an individual, we have certain reaction to whenever we face any racial discrimination or racial hate. But as a community, or there is also some kind of collective feeling that that we have whenever there is someone from our community or someone from our state is being attacked because of the physical appearance, or because of the way they speak, because of the way, because of the food that they consume. So, what is the collective feeling by the Nordic community, and how do we react as a community, as a group, to such type of attack or discrimination? And many times we protest in the streets. Many times we used to do campaign in the social media and all. But what are the troubles that we go through as a community?
Yeah, since we are in the minority in the city, it's quite difficult to react to this kind of the racist attack or discriminations. Yes, but it is must and it is required that we need to defend ourselves. So whenever we talk about racist attack or racism or discrimination taking place, since most of the us is facing one or other form of racism, either is a minor or is a major crime in our daily life. I presume that everybody is facing that. So because of that, the moment you come to know and hear this kind of the issues, then obviously everybody will shock and they plus react to those kind of things, and it is obvious because everyone want to live their life safely and happily. So once racism takes place, the whole mental peaceful is destroyed and it has gone away. So the moment we heard those kind of racist attack in anywhere in India or across the world, we definitely touch to our heart, and we always try to react on that and try to raise our voice so that the such thing should not repeat it again in future. So see, obviously this is obvious, point of all of us and attempt of all of us to at least minimize or maybe try to control the racist discriminations among the people in the country. I can give you some examples of the initiative as a community taken up in various part of the country and even in the campuses. I start with the example in the DU. In 2003, the scheme of FIOP, the 4-year course, has implemented in the DU. And at that time, the university for the first time initiated that the Hindi should be compulsory for all the undergraduate students, and they have tried to implement it. Then at that time, all the student community stand united and they raise their voice to the authority and wrote all the reasonable the reason for not making compulsory. Should be optional. Those who are willing to study should study. Those who do not cope up with the subject, because many of the students from the Northeast did not even know the script of the Hindi from the beginning. So therefore, whenever you find this subject in the at the level of undergraduate, and many of students difficult to cope up with the subject and their understanding. So they have rise, and many teachers and students have put their point of view to the authority, and ultimately the authority decided to do with to do away with all the rules and regulations for the Northeast. So Northeast student was exempted from the Hindi compulsory test. So this is one reactions to such kind of the issues rising up. It's not just a social discrimination that I'm talking about. The issues of any rules or any policy making against the majority opinion of the Nordic people. So similarly, in any kind of the attack has been taking place, the Northeast people try to unite them and stand united to voice against such social discrimination. So even in the case of the Nindo Tania in 2014, all the social and the NGOs are coming out together, and all the state representative was involved, and they protest hugely against these kind of the act. And and we have gone to the street, we have protest in the India Gate, and everywhere wherever possible we have done all the protests against such injustice. So because of that, the some positive results also come out once we move as a majority. I can give you an example of creation of the special police unit for the Northeast region in Delhi was one of the results from that protest, I must say.
I think there's some technical issue. Just wait for 1 or 2 minutes.
In society, in particular in any university or any
Professor, I think there was some technical issue. So can you please repeat from the
yeah
part where you from the protest part, like?
Yeah, so I was telling about the Nindo Tania case happened in the Lajpat Nagar in Delhi in 2014. That was one of the big incident happened in the for the Northeast people, because the boy has been died because of the severe attack by the locals. So from that onward, the massive protest has been taken place. Everybody went to the street and the protest in India Gate, and many days it was gone through. And after that, there are positive results also. After that protest, I can mention the creation of the special police unit for North region, Spooner, right now in Delhi, is a result of that. Now separately, the Delhi the special cell has been developed. Now the why this is developed, because the at that time, in the case of Nindo Tania case, the many of the people and the organizations allege that the Delhi police is not cooperating with the case, and a student was picked up and from the site of attack, and he dropped after some time. And because of the some kind of the negligence from the police, the student is not admitted to the hospital, and due to that he's dead. He was dead. So those kind of allegation also happens in the newspapers, and all those activities was occurs now. So this means that the issues of such racist discrimination taken in a society, and since the Northeast people has experienced all those activity in one or other form, they always touch to the heart, and they always feel that yes, since I was facing a problem, I was feeling that kind of mental trauma, and definitely they also facing like that. So that basically reach to everybody's heart. So on the issue of the racial discrimination, yes, we are all united on that particular front.
Yeah, Professor, do you think that whenever someone is facing any racial attack or discrimination, do you feel that the people from Northeast, especially the students, do they have any faith or confidence in the police or the legal system that without protest, without mass, um, without public outrage, do they feel that these kind of issues can be tackled without, without public protest or without public, even if there's no public outrage? Do you think that they have a confidence or a faith in the system? Or without,
Uh,
or without any such type of protest, there's no way the, what do you think the students feel about such type
yeah,
of,
see, this point I can answer in two way. One is the current situation, another is some years back. So if I talk about some years back now, if I talk about some years back, there is no the special police cell for Northeast people. So we are all individual. We react to the incident. We react to the racial discrimination. So sometimes when we face a problem and we went directly individually to the police stations, police more or less they are having not taking interest in the such cases. And another issue is many of the police which are working in the different stations speak Hindi, and the many complainants from the northeast speak English. They are more easy in English. So there are some communication gap also. So because of that, the police also not taking interest, and even the complainant are not satisfied with the step taken by the police and the complaint taken by the police. So therefore, there is a lot of miscommunication between complainant and the police, and even after police also, when they go through all this process of legal proceeding, as you all know, it takes a lot of time, and all those rigorous attending every the day of the hearings, and all those legal process take time and money. So because of that, many of the people do not want to give the complaint to the police, and do not want to go for legal actions or other things. That's why many people are reluctant to go to police and they go to the legal action. Rather, some of the people react directly at that time. they resist on the issues, and then the fight between the people, Northeast people, and the local people started. So that's why the many cases of fight and physical assault has been taken place in the past, and even now they are also there. But in the present scenario, it's little different. Now, after having the police, special police unit for the Northeast Spooner, the Joint Commissioner of the police is from the Arunachal Pradesh right now. Before that, the another the police officer from the Arunachal Pradesh was posted as in charge of that, and they have now a separate building in the some place in the South Delhi. So they are cooperating with us. Any problems in the city happens, then they can directly talk to the assistants of the police, and they can directly contact to that. So that make us easy to to approach them, and through their help they can directly direct their official to the station where the incident happened, direct the police officer to take action again such act. So if you compare the some years back and the at the moment, there's a little changes taking place, and the Spooner really help the Northeast people currently in the current situation. So there are two different way, and yes, people find more comfortable right now to do any complaint or take help from the police, and now they develop at least some confidence on the legal system and the police force currently, as compared to the past time, I can say.
Thanks a lot, Professor. Professor Bibinaz, yeah. We have talked about the physical and the mental trauma that the individual has to go through after suffering from racial attack. Do you think that it might even lead to a point where the students have to leave their career or go back to their state because of such type of issues? Like,
Yeah,
does it
this
affect their career, or is it only in the outside colleges? How much does it affect?
okay. So it's again another very relevant question to raise. Um, the experience of racism, once internalized by the person who goes through, or indirectly by the shared community, uh, it does lessen the level of confidence the person had for themselves. Like I have mentioned before, it questions back to one's identity, especially when this happens in the educational institutions. Suppose, for example, a teacher comes in the class and he or she is describing or talking about the world, and that description of world, the explanation of the world does not include you. I'm actually taking this idea from another thinker. Uh, so when the idea of this world or nation does not include you, then it immediately questions back. It creates a kind of psychic equilibrium, and it's almost like looking into the mirror and then you see nothing. Okay, so it does question back to a sense of self. Do I have a self? Do I have an identity? And how do I really understand it? Okay, it does lessen the level of confidence, and this may have a deep impact on uh, uh, their pursuit in life. Okay, and there is a before I come to whether they would come to a point, there would come to a point of even leaving the career plans that they have for themselves. But there's a need. There's a need for adequate attention and care system to be arranged by people from the Northeast, from different parts of Northeast themselves. Uh, uh, and also co-work with the local government who could provide a space and platform. So how do we platform for such networking? So how do we really lobby to the local government and also make it as a part of the system is what Tamburamanda have already laid out some examples. of. Okay. As rightly pointed out, racism has to be fought back by all Northeast communities coming together, and also having non-Northeast to at least acknowledge that there is racism, and there's a need to attend to this issue immediately, even though this may not be a direct experience, or this may not be something which is easily accessible in their consciousness. Okay, and join the fight. Okay, and just saying that, I feel for you, I feel sorry for you, or it is a disturbing news, it's not going to help. So coming to the question of whether it affects the choice in career and then pursuit in their life, I think I won't say not all, because I over the over the last 20 years of my experience of living here, I have seen the many northeastern people who thrive in against all odds. Okay, so there are people who do really well in different kinds of career choices they have had. Uh, but there are also people who are, like I said, the vulnerable. You asked about the question of vulnerability, who becomes the most vulnerable. So there are also people, and not necessarily these people are weak, but the circumstances, it's a combination of circumstances, person's own problems, the personality, all of these coming together. And there's to some people, it may actually threaten, or it does sort of, robes away your chance of pursuing the career choices you have. So I will give an example here. I don't have I never had plans to become a yoga instructor or someone who's expert in yoga, but I love doing yoga, right? But then, there's this instance of, this is in my first year, where a team of three of us were taken by our yoga instructor for some shooting on, like, morning, some kind of, shooting for yoga sessions for GTV morning program. And we went there, and there is a person which is almost like, almost about 50 years old person, comes out with a long lungi, and he's addressed by the people present there as Swami. Okay, and he immediately looked at me and said that, "Are you from Nagaland?" I said, "I'm not from Nagaland, but I am from Manipur." And then, he got stuck with this idea of Nagaland that he has built up for himself. And then he started talking about, "Oh, you people have these, spade and then arrows and bows, etc. And then you people hunt and things like that." So my immediate reaction was, this is something very new. And I have never experienced in my life, even though I'm from the Northeast, I've never experienced in my life of this hunting tradition. Okay. So that my immediate reaction was, you must be talking about some 16th century. Okay. Then that immediately got kind of like, that was quite offensive for the person. But the person moves out. He didn't show anything, on the face, whether he was offended or not. But later on, I realized that he could have got offended by it. So he went back, and after 10 minutes, he comes back and says that, "You are not going to do the, we are not going to shoot you guys, but now my daughter will be doing it." But I'm giving this example for someone, who has already planned, who has a pursuit to become an expert in the field of yoga, or any choice of that matter, snapping away of that chance just because you belong to some certain kind of race or community, it does affect the person's career plan, and it does it can actually discourage the person to a very, very far extent. Okay, so there's always a possibility.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Professor. Professor Ramanand, yeah, we're actually running short of time also. So can you please quickly add on some of the trouble that our parents, elders back at home go through because of racism? They are many of times, if you go out at night, or if you go to some other place, they are constantly worried that what will happen to our son, or maybe during times like pandemic, like Corona, or maybe there were times like when there was mass attack on the people of North students. So they have some kind of constant worry all the time. So what type of, like, what do they, can you please explain the trouble that they go through and the worry that they go through? Professor, can you please unmute?
Right.
Yeah, please.
See, all the parents of the students, they're always concerned with the safety of the student, and they want the best educations of their children, right? So the moment you talk about their concern is very much, as compared to even ourselves as a student. They are all concerned with their safety, the student, the children's safety and their education. So there are two ways you can look at. The one is the concern for the education, whether whatever you are studying, whatever the students are doing, how they are doing, what is the development. They are a major concern how they will cope up with the current education and current challenges, because you all know every day and day the times again the educations now become tougher and tougher, and the competition become more competitive and competitive. So it's obvious that the parents concerned with their education, the student education, their children's education, and how they will cope up with those kind of the complex education systems in the India, and very frustrating. Sometimes they hear the yes, while students are studying, something happens to their children and the student from the northeast. They feel that the my children are living there, and how they will be facing that problem, even if the student from other states are undergoing those process, even the the parents from the northeast, because they are living far away, they cannot see student directly and they cannot touch them, they cannot hug them. So all this emotional trauma has been felt by the parents, and the we can see that. And many of time, even many parents call us to ask about what is the situation in the Delhi University and the Delhi area. If something is happens, how you will be helping them. So these are the major concern for the every parents back home in northeast. They do feel anxious. They do feel more tense and stressful, that the how student will be cope up. And see, in the current the pandemic, definitely many parents want their children back home, because how they will go out for the essential item, and they hear that some of the racist attack on the student who are not allowed to buy their essential item in a mall, even in the Noida, even in the Arunachal, the Telangana and the Karnataka. It's really happened, and the news are around, and even in Mumbai also. So such things happen, then they become more stressful and very concerned that students are living in Delhi or other state, and if they are not allowed to buy their essential item, and how they will live, and how they're going to
Professor,
study.
can you please quickly conclude in 30 seconds?
Yeah, I'll do so. So yes, it's a mental trauma, and I can say it's a mental stress. And since the students are living away from their home, and the parents are really they can't sleep or night peacefully, and their concerns are very genuine. And anything happens anywhere in the state, and their children are living in that zone, definitely their worries are truly truly justified.